to Golf Business Live. Here's Jay, Karen, and Don Rea.
Okay, good afternoon, Golf Universe. This is Jay, Karen, CEO of the National Golf Course Owners Association. It is Friday Live, Golf Business Live, Friday edition. Don Rea is with me. Don is owner of Augusta Ranch Golf Club in Mesa, Arizona, member of the NGCOA Board of Directors and former member of the PGA Board of Directors. Don, how you doing today, bud?
I'm doing good. You know, it's heating up temperature-wise out here in Arizona, but everything's good here at Augusta Ranch.
Good. Well, so as a reminder to folks at home that are watching live, that we have a Q&A module here in the Zoom room that we're in. So if you have questions for Don or myself, based on the topics we're talking today, or if you got something on your mind that's not a topic for today, bring it up and we'll try to take your questions live on the show. We have NGCOA staff standing by watching those questions to address anything that they can address as well. So a couple things, a couple small things, before we get to kind of a pretty heavy topic, but I always like to lead the show with tell us what is happening in Mesa, Arizona. To anything new and interesting this week at Augusta Ranch.
Well, it's been crazy. Obviously, much like other states, the governor did put a curfew here. And so, certainly right away, it's like, what does that mean? From 8 o'clock at night until 5 in the morning, you can't do certain things. But there was some confusion in the proclamation of, did it apply to golf courses? Does it apply to my glow ball event? Does it apply to my restaurant? And, I don't have lawyers at my disposal, so we kind of wait for the big franchises to tell us what they're going to do. And so we watched as the advertising came out that restaurants were going to stay open past 8 o'clock, even though the curfew was there because we were private businesses. But so I had to deal with that. Certainly got some employees. Hey, what if I get pulled over, Don? Do I need an employment card? So I was putting together some of those for the employees that felt like they might get pulled over after curfew when they were coming home from work. Some did not want to work just because where they live was an area that they were scared that something could happen. So, once again, it's what an incredible 90 days now it's been to be a golf course owner of dealing with, of making decisions the best of your abilities. Your family's worried about things. They're worried about you. Your staff is worried about themselves. They're worried about the club. They're worried about you. Your customers are looking for answers. And we're sitting in this chair. I feel like it was my old umpire days where I have to make a call. And sometimes half of the people are happy and half the people are sad, but I'm still in that chair. And I love the chair. And I try to bring as much compassion and wisdom to this chair as I possibly can for all the folks involved. But we continue to get put in this chair in very difficult circumstances that don't just challenge people professionally or recreationally, but challenges them personally. And so, that's when really your morals come into play, which I think at the heart of every leader is someone who loves people. And so here it's been very difficult. I feel for my fellow PGA members and owners out there. It's been a very emotional week for me, just with all these things that we're dealing with. And maybe just, let's get candid. That's what this show's all about. The amount of stress that's on you in this chair. You don't realize it. I joked last week about, drinking some NA beers. It's because all of a sudden you start justifying an extra glass of wine or a beer at the end of your shift. Hey, listen, I'm speaking the truth here, people. I know the people listening are doing the same thing. And you start wondering, man, I got to tone this down. That's a fact of stress. And if I'm feeling this, that means my staff's feeling this. And so acting like a leader, it's before and after I get out of my car and while I'm driving home. So, that's it. Anything specific? Hey, May was the greatest month in the history of the golf course. Play is up. People are happy.
That's something. That is
20
the
years.
History of the golf course. Who knew, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, could any of us said in 2 years, by the way, you're going to have the best month ever in the history of the golf course? Nobody would believe you.
No way. And I'm literally back to my budget right now. I lost 2 major weeks in March. In this market, no way do you come back from that. You're walking with a limp maybe for 2 years. I'm back. I'm back, baby. And it's new people. It ain't getting more rounds out of the same old people. The game is growing. And I know we keep saying it, but you know what? Some of these associations, when you talk about nice commercials and things like that, that takes time to put together. And I started thinking about that, Jay. You know, I've kind of called out some associations. I hope these commercials are shown. I hope these commercials are shown. It starts with us. It starts with us. How are we marketing our goal? Are we just doing the same Facebook advertising, or are we using Facebook advertising and getting out there and targeting people who like soccer, baseball, football, tennis, softball? Are you doing that with your Facebook advertising? Because you can certainly do that. So I've really put it on myself.
Speaking of advertising, as you saw, I got a text this morning from Rock Lucas in Columbia, South Carolina, who saw on his mobile device an Augusta Ranch. I don't know what app he was using, but an Augusta Ranch advertisement. So we got to have a chat with whoever is pushing out your advertising, who thinks that someone in South Carolina is going to fly to Mesa, Arizona right now to play golf.
I know hey, we're the best executive course in Arizona, Jay. So you might fly out here just to play the best executive course. Of course it says that. And hey, I point to that to me, and that's just like any good leader. You get a lot of people who are smarter than you to do those things. And between our staff and one-to-one marketing, I'll throw the plug out to them right now. One-to-one marketing, something with that.
Good company.
Actually, GoDaddy bought a company called Marketplace, and they're doing some of my social media stuff because I just ran out of hours of the day. So, for a mere couple $100 a month, I have, a group of people now working on that because our staff's too busy doing the things that they're awesome at. That's what sometimes we give jobs to people to do at our facility and they're not awesome at it and they actually hate doing it, when we should just outsource it and let the people who are good at selling golf, giving lessons, walking the line, let them do what they do. Let a PJ member do what he does to grow the game and maybe hire a little marketing arm, just outsource it to bring people to that PGA professional or golf course owner. Because we know we can get golfers going if we get them here. We just never have the biggest megaphone to do it.
No, that's good advice. Real good advice. Well, one thing in the legislative universe we should talk about was that the Senate passed a bill. They passed House Resolution 7010, which was kind of an update to the original Paycheck Protection Program. And so there are a few provisions that I wanted to run through real quick to remind folks that there's an update to the PPP program. This is not the second wave or the fourth wave of legislation that we're hoping that Washington will pass that will address, the overall situation, extension of the PPP or extension of unemployment, those kinds of things. That was taken up in the House, but has not been taken up in the Senate. So, but what has passed the Senate, but has not, as of right now, been signed by the president. A couple of changes to make sure everybody understands that. And this is courtesy of the National Restaurant Association. They put out some great stuff that I'm going to repeat for everybody. So under the covered period of the PPP loans, that the funds can be spent within 24 weeks or a borrower can select that the PPP funds be spent until December 31st, 2020, the end of any covered period by the Act. 2 is that non-payroll expenses, this is really important, non-payroll expenses like rent, mortgage payments, utilities are limited to 40% overall PPP loan expenditures if the borrower seeks maximum loan forgiveness. The next thing is on loan forgiveness will not be reduced due to a lower number of full-time employees if an employer, 1, is unable to rehire a previous employee, or 2, shows an inability to hire similarly qualified employees before December 31st, 2020, or 3, shows an inability to return to the same level of business activity as prior to February 15, 2020, due to new standards for sanitation, social distancing, or any other safety requirements. So they're loosening up some of the rules around this. Last 2 to mention as far as the loan terms, new PPP loans, because there was still money left in the coffers to be used, dispersed after the enactment of the Act will have 5-year loan terms. That's fantastic. For previous PPP loans, the Act notes that nothing will prohibit lenders and borrowers from mutually agreeing to modify the maturity terms of a covered loan. And the last one is that the PPP borrowers will have full access to payroll tax deferment. So lots of good stuff to, I think, fix some of the problems. Not every problem has been solved. It's not a perfect piece of legislation, but let's hope that the next wave of legislation opens up eligibility to C7 organizations, C6 organizations, and does what's necessary to support the American economy. But as we're seeing, with the American economy, I mentioned this last week, with the American economy opening back up a little bit, or a lot in some cases, it'll cause the federal government to question, how much do we need now? Do we need the same kind of funding to the same, all businesses, or should we get a little bit more surgical on who's still hurting because of all this, who's hurting more than others, or what have you? So, going to be interesting to see what the Senate takes up. But so anyway, I don't think we don't have any questions right now. But to the folks at home, as a reminder, use the Q&A module to. Let me make sure if I don't think there are any questions.
Let me, Jay, I've got some comments on that. I mean,
sure.
So we got our check because I'm supposed to be your boots on the ground guy, right? So let me give you some. My boots are talking here. So we got our money May 1. And so I had 8 weeks, feeling a little bit of the pressure, built my spreadsheets, felt pretty good about it. Once again, that Grandy and Associates site does a really good job of sharing some of that stuff. And not to plug them, I'm not even one of their customers, but they're giving stuff away for free. And I'm a golf course owner, so that's what I look for because I don't have the money for that stuff, right?
Right.
But so I'll tell you right now, I can't get to 40%. I can't even get to 25% with just leases and utilities. So that wasn't even going down to 60%, it wasn't going to help me. It's made me very creative how to get more money back to the staff. The only thing that changes for me is because of the 8 weeks and I paid twice a month, my fourth payroll was going to get missed. And so I was going to push up my fourth payroll by 2 days so that 4 payrolls would be in the 8 week period so I could look for full forgiveness. That certainly has changed that. But all it's going to do for me is I'm just going to do payroll at the same time. I will have spent my entire $232,000 that I received, and it's going to be about 85, let's just say 82% of that money will go straight to the staff of Augusta Ranch. We did hire some people trying to get to the FTEs, but we've also given bonuses. I know we had some questions last week of what you call those, and once again, get some guidance from all the wisdom that's out there. But I think that it's like I see some brilliance behind this PPP. The people who came up with it. Because I was forced in an 8 week period to make sure that this got paid back. And I was like, well, why, if it's all going to be forgiven, why not give as much possible? So I'm writing $1,000 checks to people who make minimum wage, $1,000 bonus checks here at Augusta Ranch, because I got to blow through this $180,000 that the government told me, please help out the staffs that are suffering through this too. I really love that it went to 24 weeks because some of these pockets of the United States that never got open, it was going to be impossible for them to meet the 8 week periods because we all tried to jump in early in case the money ran out. And then all of a sudden we got our checks, but we couldn't even spend them for 6 weeks because we were still closed because of the local government decision. So I love the 24 weeks. I think a lot of people, even though it dropped to 60, they're going to end up spending way more than that, even if you can push it out. But I think it's get your spreadsheets and get going. And even though it's 24 weeks, I'm going to be applying for forgiveness by the 2nd, 3rd week of July for sure, just to stop getting those statements. They're already charging me interest on my $232,000. I don't know if they're waiving that yet. Ronnie Miles, if you could help me with that. It hasn't been much. Maybe it's about $300 in interest they put on that. But it's good. It's this PPP, if done correctly and the right way, will help the very employees that lost their jobs when this thing hit.
Which is what it was meant for. That's why it's called the Payroll Protection Program, right?
Amen. Amen.
So, and just to make everybody aware of another conversation happening among the associations with regard to Washington is I'm hoping that we may get a mulligan on the business entertainment deduction question, because as most of you know, up until the end of 2017, if someone took a client out to play golf or a potential client out to play golf, they could deduct 50% of that fee as a business expense, just like a meal or what have you. Well, the 2017 tax bill completely eliminated the entertainment deduction, not just for golf, but just the entertainment deduction, and which was meant as a revenue raiser, if you will, for the federal government in that tax bill. And we lobbied to preserve it because there's certainly an argument to be made that golf, there's probably no better business entertainment expense than golf that actually is used to facilitate business and relationship building and so forth, more so than buying a couple of concert tickets for a client, which, can you imagine sitting next to someone at a concert, a client, and you're not able to actually build a relationship and talk business and get to know each other, where on a golf course, you're there for 4 hours being able to do that. So President Trump has mentioned a couple of times the desire to bring back the business entertainment deduction. And I know, because his family owns golf courses, there's going to be a certain number of critics out there that will say, oh, well, then he gets to feather his own nest by supporting the golf courses. But, this should never have gone away. And so we just because he's mentioned it a few times, I just wanted the folks at home to know that it's on our short list of items that we are talking to Washington about and ready to support and advocate for the return of the business deduction, even if it was at 50%. And the reason why it's getting talked about is as an economic stimulus. If we're in this economic recession or depression, in the economy right now, what can we do to get people spending money is what economic stimulus legislation is all about. So that is the intent of this, is to be one among many stimuli to get folks out there spending money in our economy. So, Don, I just on that question real quick, just again, where the rubber hits the road, do you see client golf? Do you see business golf out there happening? And do you think that we're making the right case for the return of the deduction?
Well, one, I would say the only reason they're even thinking about it is because golf is done right by this crisis. And we did approach the CDC. Collaboratively, there's 7 logos on the Back to Golf document. And that means that we're all thinking what's best for America. And I think the White House has recognized that. And I think even though we didn't get the answer we wanted a couple of years ago when that deduction was removed, we were told at the time, hang in there. It's just that's what's going to happen right now. You have to trust me. And I think that's when you build relationships with legislators, when you do have them out to your golf course, when you don't have anything wrong. It's easy to invite people to your golf course when you want something from them. How about we just invite them to our golf course when they want to see a constituent, when they want to talk to and see what's going on in their district. And so I would encourage you that we've created a great opportunity now to reach out to legislators and say thank you for deeming golf to be essential. Thank you for getting us open quicker than other businesses. And I just want to bring you out to say thank you. And if they come, they come. But getting asked, we all know, feels good. And so we need to do that. As far as client golf, absolutely. What's happening now, I will say this. I think one of the reasons we're seeing this boom for golf is there is no youth sports out there. So the parents that we know were getting pulled away to club sports, weekend tournaments, and things like that now are coming with their families here. Once again, businesses are taking this opportunity to bring clients out, bring their staff out. So to answer your question, Jay, absolutely. This is the best time for companies to be bringing out some staff to say, let's go do something fun, social distancing safe. I know you don't play a lot of golf, but let's go out to a little place like Augusta Ranch and let's just have fun. And who cares what you shoot? Let's just, once again, it's not about swing and stance and score. It's about relationships. So absolutely perfect time to do it. I hope the White House and can get this thing through Congress, because I think it'd be substantial for everybody involved, because it will build up morale. We all know, just like I told at the very beginning of the program, we're all feeling a sense of gloom, even if we have our chest down, no smile on our face. These are things like this to bring people together for 4 to 5 hours. Come on, golf's the best. Yes, I'm bullish on this. I hope it happens. And I'm glad that we built relationships through good decision-making that even allows that to be an open discussion in Washington, D.C.
Agreed. So I'll keep folks posted on progress on that particular question. None of this is easy work in Washington. When you have a dysfunctional engine in Washington, it's hard to get it to function in your favor, or to make sound good judgment sometimes. But nevertheless, that's why we're here, is to exercise our rights to lobby Congress on these things, and so we are. All right. So the next topic that we're going to talk about is we have no script for today. Don and I will say right now, we have no script. This is going to be an extemporaneous discussion about the real serious issues happening in America right now, and maybe where it intersects with golf. And this is just going to be a conversation, because I will say neither one of us is an authority on this, but like anyone, we have our own experiences and thoughts that I think, you and I are really good friends, and we can have an honest conversation in front of people, which makes us a little nervous. When people ask me about public speaking, they say, oh, you look so comfortable doing it. How are you not nervous? And what I go back to on that is the fundamental thing that makes people not so nervous when they're public speaking is they know their subject so well. The better you know your subject, the less you're going to be nervous on stage talking about it, because it's it's intuitive, right? People are afraid of looking like fools, of not saying the right thing or saying the wrong thing, or just looking ignorant, right? So that's what gets, I think, most people nervous about public speaking, is looking like a fool. Well, here we are, Don, we're probably going to look like fools. No, but seriously, it's it's okay for us to be a little nervous, because this is not a topic that we're necessarily authorities on. But thank goodness next week we'll make this more instructional for us and our audience, when we'll have Renee Powell on our program, who, Renee is an African-American, wonderful person who owns Clearview Golf Course in Ohio. She's on the PGA board of directors, LPGA player in the past, LPGA member now, amazing golf course owner operator, and her family has one of the few African-American owned golf courses in America. Her father built this course, I believe, right after World War II. And amazing story. So we're going to have Renee on, definitely, maybe some others next week, to talk a little bit more about this so that we can maybe listen and learn. But right now, Don, I think it's important for people to be very vulnerable instead of guarded in moments like these. And that's really what's happening here. And so, the past several weeks, we've been talking about how golf and people are challenged, and their physical and mental health are challenged by this pandemic, right? We've been trying to work through those challenges because of, the death of George Floyd, and that it was videotaped the way it was and shown and broadcast to the world. It would just put it in front of us, this incredibly sensitive topic and tragic issue. And so now, and because of the resulting protests around America, now our spirit and our morals are getting challenged. The health of those spirits, spiritually and morally, we're getting challenged on top of the pandemic. So it's just like, oh my gosh. And so we've seen where we are in the intersection of the pandemic and golf. Where do you think we are on the intersection of racism and diversity in golf? You've been in this industry a long time. You've been on the PGA board, NGCUA board. Now we're at an intersection where we have to stop and look and say, holy cow, where are we? Where are we? Where do you think we are right now?
Yeah. Well, you're right, Jay. I mean, all I have to do is look in the mirror and know I'm not an authority on what people are feeling across this nation right now. It's interesting, here at Augusta Ranch, my desk is literally right behind the golf shop counter. I see people check in and out for their tee times all day long. And it literally is a melting pot of America. And I see everybody, and a lot of people want to talk about it. A lot of people don't want to talk about it. You always have this question at a golf course. What TV stations do you put on in your restaurant or in your golf shops? Do you keep it just to the Golf Channel? Do you put the CNN on? Do you put Fox on? Do you get out of that? Is a golf course a place for you to come to not hear this stuff because you just gotten beat up with it? Or is it a place where you kind of let your guard down and talk about it? It's always tough. At private clubs, it's a very difficult situation. At public, it's difficult too. I think where it comes down to is, man, I love golf. I see nothing. I mean, I love Augusta Ranch just because it's just par 61 that anybody can play at any level. It doesn't matter who you are, you can afford Augusta Ranch. And so that's what we get. If you looked in my parking lot, you'd see beat up pickup trucks, but you'd see a Corvette out there. And that's what I see. When you say this dysfunctional engine that rests in Washington, D.C., it's true, but it's a beautiful dysfunctional engine in a sense, just because we are about justice, even when we fail sometimes, but America's about justice. And so, Seth Waugh said it, I got to give him credit, and maybe someone said it before him, but Seth's very eloquent on that. But, I want more than anything for the game of golf to look more like America, because I see it here at Augusta Ranch. I have this little microcosm, and I see it every day of who plays Augusta Ranch, and it gives me hope because nobody cares. They're just out here to have a good time. It's awesome. It's beautiful, and then we just would love America to be more like golf, and you don't know who you're going to play with sometimes. You're on the first tee and you're a twosome, you're going to pair with another twosome, and you're going to have to introduce yourself. You have to take your hat off. You're going to have to shake their hands, or you're going to elbow, you're going to fist bump. I don't know what we're going to do, but you make eye contact. We teach our juniors, take your hat off, make eye contact, shake their hands. And so isn't that a beautiful thing? We try to leave it better than we found it. We have to call rules violations on ourselves. And we're out here just spending time with people saying, great shot. And it's so awesome. And I think as more America is getting touched by this, because obviously demand is increasing for golf, I think they're going to get it. And I think it's our job to tell us that's what we believe golf is about, is that it crosses so many different lines that there's too many lines even to talk about. But all I know is we can do more in golf, and we are doing more the best that we can. I'm glad that we were thinking about it. There was a time in our game maybe we didn't think about it so much. There were some really good articles that I read this last 3-4 days, but we are thinking about it now. So hey, kudos to the associations. But no, we're not patting ourselves on the back yet. Still a long ways to go. But man, I think, like, once again, I see Augusta Ranch. I know what golf can be because I see it every day, and it's so cool and it's beautiful.
So, and and we'll talk about the golf experience and how it can facilitate so much. And then I think we should talk about kind of transcending that and thinking about the work that has to be done in this industry, right? But, we have a gift in this golf experience that is, unlike so many things in society. Think about this. You get on an airplane and you got a 4-hour flight from, let's say, Atlanta to Las Vegas, direct flight. You sit down on a plane next to someone, and what happens could be one of two things. Usually, about 80% it moves in this direction. You don't want to say anything to the next. You don't say a thing to the stranger next to you, right? It's like I'd say 80%. Nobody wants to talk to anybody. Put my buds on, and I'll do my business, watch my movies, and that's it. 20% of the time, they're probably engaging and talking and what have you. But there's this uncomfortable reality of, you know what? I don't want to get to know my fellow man or fellow woman right here. I'm fine. But you put someone in a golf car next to a stranger and for 4 hours, and you're doing something together, you're going to get to know that person. And golf is the vehicle that does that, is what we're saying, right? It's like, and when you go to a restaurant, not everybody would choose the family style seating, right? You come with your wife, your child, or a friend. We want a 2-top. We don't want the 12-top with all of these other people, right? So there's this instinct not to sit down and get to know other people. Golf is different. We almost force them into this. It's voluntary, obviously, but we put people together, and they're willing to let the guards down, get to know each other, and so forth. And I love that. So we have a natural gift and a natural product that can facilitate people getting to know each other, right? And I think we can do more to use that product to facilitate more getting to know each other. I think it's a wonderful thing. So you're right. We're fortunate and lucky that we have a product that if we were to do actual work on diversity, inclusion, and anti-racism and these things, we have an ideal product to use and put out there and use it as a vehicle to do this. And so that's all true. And we should talk about, I think, when people are asking, and again, we're no authorities on this, but I think we have our experiences. For me, my experiences on these go back to my college years. I went to a university where the college valued diversity. There was recruitment efforts and so forth, and it was a 27% African-American on campus. And this was Winthrop University in Rock Hill, South Carolina. And so the student life staff and the president of the university, they put us together. They did intentional things to have white and black students do things together. And that is the first step in simply all of these macro issues, is getting to know other people. Regardless of philosophy and all of this kind of stuff, it's just who's your roommate, who's on your intramural team, who's in your fraternity. And those kinds of experiences, getting to know people, all of a sudden changes how you feel about so much of this. And there's a great video that was that's kind of circulating on social media right now, and it's this African-American guy. He's probably about 40 years old, and it's nothing but him talking about who he is, and it's really funny, and it's really disarming, and it's just how he hates spiders, and he loves this, and it's like, get to know me. And it's like, wow, that is the first step in all of this. And so that's, to me, that's great. Do you witness that happening in your life in golf? Is just this getting to know each other at the fundamental level? And where does it happen? Does it happen in church? Does it happen? Where does it happen?
Yeah, that's good. I think when anybody has a common thread, that it builds you together. I love what Simon Sinek says. If you're in New York City all by yourself on a subway and someone says, hey, I'm from Tempe, it's like, I'm from Phoenix. And we have a bond right in the middle of New York City because we're from the same state. And then he takes it one more level and says, if you're in Paris and someone says, yeah, I'm from New York City, you're like, I'm from Arizona. We're both in the United States. And instantly we're starting a conversation because we both know we're from the same country. And golf is that way. When you are playing golf with a group that you don't know, you do know that you love golf. And so you're open to, well, we have something in common. It's going to conferences. That everybody who's there is interested in golf. And so there's a common thread. It kind of brings down the walls a little bit for you to introduce yourself to somebody, because there is something in common we can talk about other than the weather, because that's about the only safe thing to talk about nowadays. And so I think that's fascinating. I think you make a good point. We have to be intentional about these things. There was a 5 years ago, I approached the Arizona Hispanic Chamber of Commerce because they did a golf tournament, and I saw that. I didn't know who was teaching their clinic, but you should have a clinic. That was 5 years ago, and now I can't tell you how many friends I have from one phone call that I made to the Arizona Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. I made the same phone call to the Black Chamber of Commerce, and so you have to be intentional. And I know that sometimes golf can be a sport where you put your AirPods in when you're on the range and you're hitting balls, and even though nothing's playing, you just don't want anybody to walk up to you. And you want to be secluded. Maybe you're getting away from a tough day or a tough situation at home, or the COVID situation. But you can, this game can make you want to be by yourself, but it's also the greatest game to get some people together and make a friend over the span of 4 hours. You're exactly right, Jay. And it is being intentional. We have to do that in golf, because there is only 10% of the population playing it. And so if we're going to be the ones that are going to have we all know, there's a book I give every Augusta Ranch employee. It's called Raving Fans. To be a raving fan, because we all know advertising's so expensive. But if you create a raving fan, somebody who's just going to talk about your brand all the time, especially nowadays with social media, that's what you want to do. And to do that, I think you have to build a culture and a climate that everybody loves what you're doing. And golf can do that. We just have to remember who has the power here. We want our associations to do some of this for us. And well, they should. That's why we're members of them. But it's also going to be from the boots on the rubber meets the road, the boots on the ground. It's going to be down here in the trenches, in the farmlands of golf across this United States to grow the golfers that we need. So it was a long answer to your easy question, but you're exactly right. Getting to know people is awesome. It's just
you said you're right, Don. You mentioned being intentional. So being intentional, calling the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, that's an intentional move, right? That oftentimes I think people are not intentional because it puts them in an uncomfortable position that they're not used to. And there's so many metaphors about this where you're not going to grow your muscles unless you're challenging your muscles. You're not going to expand your comfort zone until you get uncomfortable. That's just the way it works, right? For me, again, going back to the college days, was going to the step shows of the African-American fraternities and sororities and being the only white guy in the gymnasium there watching and seeing my friends, and just, that was uncomfortable. But all of a sudden now I go back to campus, I see my friends, and my comfort zone has widened, right? It's like, that was an intentional move. Most people, I think, are afraid to get uncomfortable because they just think it's risky. They don't know what's going to happen. So, I'm looking forward to talking to Renee next week about what are some intentional things that are the most meaningful that could be done for people to grow and to expand their minds. When I was in my early 20s here in Charleston, I approached the Charleston Community Development Center, the Youth Development Center, and I became a big brother. And that brought me into the poorest areas of Charleston, and having a little brother that, African-American, and his name is British, and we would spend so much time together. But, it was very uncomfortable to do that as a kid, and so I'm glad I did, because these experiences, cumulative, add up to the opening of the mind. And so when we're in leadership positions, then we come to the table with open minds and maybe a little advocacy bent to that, hey, let's do something here, because you can see where doing something makes a difference. And so I think, getting uncomfortable and doing something good is like what you're talking about is important. But what about speaking out when you see negative things as something for people to do? An off-color joke about women or Black people, or something that you hear. How much more fortitude does it take someone to speak out against that than to be intentional about trying something good?
Yeah, well, it's America, right? I mean, that's the beauty of it. We do have that freedom, and I think it's, you pick your spots. Every new employer I hired at Augusta Ranch, I said, at the time when Katie was 14, now she's 17. I said, Katie walks around that corner, what just came out of your mouth? Would you be embarrassed? Because if you would, then don't say it. I don't want to hear it, and so I'm not going to project any of my beliefs. My faith is huge in my life. And I hope everybody, gets saved someday, but many won't. And that's okay. I'm not going to project that onto you, but I'm going to lead my life the way I possibly can. I guess, Jay, as much as people think I'm this sales guy and I talk too much, I mean, I've heard it. They're like, Don, there's no way you can talk in 3 minutes, dude. It's going to be 10. I'm getting better. I really think I'm getting better. But at the end of the day, I try to I try to lead by example, and I don't try to speak into people's lives because I don't know where they're at. Lou Holtz talks about what you just said. I cannot judge anybody until I know who they are. You got to get to know somebody. You don't know what I went through. People here don't know that for 2 years I didn't walk. I was in Shriners Hospital with crippled children, and I was in a wheelchair, and people laughed at me in 4th grade, and they took me out of 4th grade because I was getting ridiculed at school because I was in a wheelchair. And so I got tutored for a year. Nobody knows that about me. They don't know that, and that's okay. But if you get to know me, then you'd go that maybe that's why Don works so hard, is because he feels like for 2 years he lost a lot of things in sports and in schooling. So you're exactly right, Jay. And golf's the greatest way to just, your guard goes down. On the first hole, I'm not going to ask you any questions like that. I'm just going to say, hey, you played her before? Where should I hit it? What do you think this putt's going to do? Pretty soon, by the 9th or the 10th hole, hey, would you like something? We want a beverage at the turn? That's on me. And then pretty soon, we're talking about, so where are you from? Where's your family from? Where'd you go to school? And then I guarantee you over the course of 4 hours, you're going to find something similar. Did you have them with them? Maybe it's coming up from divorced parents, or maybe it's dealing with a miscarriage that was very difficult in your life. I mean, we've all gone through these things. Golf disarms you because you're focused on playing a great game and you have 4 hours off the grid to do it. And so, I guess I would just keep that of what you're going, that flow of that. I don't need to know if we have to speak up in front of people. Some people are really good at that, and I think they should do what they've been gifted with. For me, I don't feel that way. I try to lead by example and make sure everybody feels like they're heard. I think that's the most important thing.
I think that's a great way to approach this too. Everybody has gifts that they can use to work, in their own ways on this. Not everybody is going to be the same and has the same set of tools to be able to advocate and change and be uncomfortable and so forth. So you're right. I think recognizing that is good. We have Craig Kessler who's asking a question or making a statement, and it's a good one, that public golf can often look like America. It depends upon the day of the week, which course you're going to and so forth. This is that's really great. But the leadership level of golf does not, and there was an article written by Jim Beattie in African American Golfer Digest magazine last fall that really caught my attention. And I've known Jim for a little while, and he loves this industry, loves golf. And it really pained him to have to kind of write this article, but he did a kind of a survey or an analysis of the boardrooms and the C-suites or the senior staff of the major national golf organizations. And essentially it was like that 97% or whatever the number was, but it was close to 97% are both male and white, and that the leadership of golf needs to look like America. And that is really tough. That is a generational thing that it usually takes a generation to start seeing change in leadership, demographics. And I think what we're seeing right now, there are ways we can accelerate that, whether it's expanding the board, creating basically putting new seats at the table and being intentional about who's at the table from a diversity standpoint. And the golf industry is behind the curve on that one. There's just no question about it, and I think work needs to be done. And some really good work is being done by people that I've witnessed that maybe the rest of the industry doesn't have the luxury of seeing. For example, about 4 years ago, 3.5, 4 years ago, the USGA hosted a diversity 2-day workshop at Sheila Johnson's hotel in Virginia, where all the major national golf associations brought 2 senior staff in a real workshop format to learn and to make commitments on what we can all do in diversity and inclusion. The rest of the golf industry didn't see that, but what we see is the staff is driving a lot of this at the leadership level. The staff is driving it. What we need are the governing bodies and the elected leaders in golf to also be on board and to engage seriously in this conversation. Because as staff members, you're my boss, Don, right? You're on the board. As staff members, we can drive the diversity question, but if the board members aren't also ready and willing to engage in that, or it doesn't come from them as well, then it's like we're pushing an agenda instead of having a shared agenda. And so a lot of work has to be done at the leadership table and the leadership circles to start making that look like America. And I'll argue this, Don, we could actually see change in the leadership of how it looks like America faster than we could see the rest of golf looking like America. How hard would it be to get millions of more African Americans playing golf, but maybe 36 more African Americans in leadership positions, leadership staff around golf, right? So we can accelerate that change. I'm convinced, and Jim Beatty ends up being my conscience on this, because his article was it wasn't an expose, because we all know each other. We see each other. This is not an expose, but it brought light to a really interesting issue that when will golf's leadership look like America? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, certainly let's not forget one of the good fruits of diversity is diverse opinion in a room. That's how you make good decisions when not everybody's thinking the same way. You almost always hate that person who plays the devil's advocate in a room, but at least it stirs it up and people start thinking about something that maybe they didn't think about before. I mean, I have to commend the PGA of America. They've made an intentional effort. Susie Whaley as the president. Obviously, we have a woman president of the PGA, and if there's anything there's this perception of is that we're this very white association, male-dominated association. So we've recognized that. We're not sticking our head in the sand. And Renee Powell's one of our board members, and that board member position was created by the board to say we want an at-large member of the PGA as a member of the board of directors, so there's more representation to our members. And Renee got that spot. There's 2 other businesswomen who are independent directors. So we added an independent spot to be intentional and making sure that we had diverse opinion in the room. And so I do think it's both ways. I think, but also it's boards feeling empowered to set the vision for their associations. I think as a CEO, and whether it's you or Seth or Red or whatever it may be, you have a job and you have that job for a reason. And you could think in certain terms, but the members of that board are the boots on the ground. We're the ones who are feeling that. And so you certainly should plant some seeds in a boardroom to see what everybody thinks about it, to get me somewhere that I'm thinking in terms of vision and 30,000 feet and 100 years from now. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's incumbent on us as a board to remember that's what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be tackling the issues of the day, but we're also talking about the future of our game and to leave this world and this game and our associations better than we found it, just like we do in a round of golf. And so I believe it's intentional. I believe a lot of associations are focusing on that. I have to give props to the PGA of America because we talked about it. I went on the 3 years I was on the PGA board. I did a lot of diversity inclusion training, and I found out that I was a little biased. Sandy Cross, I've had very good candid talks with her because I don't want to have this unconscious bias. I want to be conscious of my bias so that I can fix it. And someday I'll be unconsciously unbiased. And that'll be a great place to be, because then I use the proper words just because that's the only word I know to use. And I stop calling the PGA a fraternity and maybe, being insensitive to our women members who are like, well, what's the LPGA, sorority? I mean, it's not about that. It's about a people who love the game of golf. And so I think it's getting better. Once again, have a long way to go. We're always here to improve. This isn't a destination. It's a preparation every day of our life. And so, but we do have to be intentional about it. And that's okay, and let's get everybody on board. Let's be leaders and let's act like that at our own facilities too. Can't sit on a board and go, hey, we're going to make sure that our association is diverse. You better look around your own facility. Is your own golf course diverse? Because why don't you start there? That will definitely help. And we'll get it from both ends. Get people playing the game, working in the game, and eventually in leadership positions, and then from top down also. And then this game will look exactly like
that's exactly what I was saying. If for that to bubble up to leadership, that's a generation or two. But to make change at the leadership level, you can do that within 2 years if you were intentional by adding seats at the table. And I think that's one of the problems is that there's a feeling that this is a zero-sum game at the leadership circles, meaning that if someone is going to come to this table that's diverse, that means someone's going to have to give up their seat for that to happen. And nobody wants to give up their seat. But there are so many ways to add seats to the table as well. And, once boards and leadership realize the value of diversity and then the intention of picking people and bringing people to the table because of diversity, then you see the value of, yes, replacing people with that diversity, because that becomes an important ingredient in great decision making. So this is a long road, but I think what we're looking for, Don, are ways to run down that road instead of the crawl that we've been doing. So I think that's, and I think, and what I find right now, and I'm going to end the conversation for us today on this, because, next week maybe will be more important to hear from folks who can teach us, and that
Absolutely.
I wrote an article, very unrelated to this, but I wrote an article about a year or two ago about Pinehurst and the creation of the cradle, that little, par 3 course, that 9-hole par 3 course, where it's let your hair down, music blaring from the trees, rock and roll is blaring from the trees, the mobile bar is set up, it's just this very different vibe for golf, right? But you look over to the left and you see the tennis courts and people in their whites playing, tennis, and it's like, wow. I said, okay, we've been talking about how golf should let their hair down. Finally, when Pinehurst really invests in this in a major way and they're letting their hair down, it's like it gave permission to the rest of the industry to say, okay, now it's okay to do this because Pinehurst did it. So you know what? I guess the rest of us can now embrace this. Now, some of you, like Augusta Ranch, have been doing it all along. I'm talking about the rest of the golf world out there to unbutton the collar, maybe even get rid of the collar, enjoy yourselves. And that's all it's all about. And I liked that. Right now, what we're finding on these race issues, diversity issues, is the George Floyd situation, as tragic as it is. What we're seeing this week is everybody coming and saying something and talking about it now. Corporations, organizations, politicians, every day, your neighbors, everybody's now talking about what people were afraid to talk about. So I'm hoping now that we're transcending this, where we now all have permission to add it to the board agenda. We all now have permission to bring this into discussions and really grapple with this, rather than waiting for someone else to do it and feeling, it's moving us into that uncomfortable territory. We're kind of thrust into it. And I'm okay with that. And I'm glad that we're kind of here now. So as unfortunate as the circumstances that are bringing us here. So I look forward to continuing discussing this on this show, in our magazine, conferences. NGCOA, I mentioned in our post today that we're the first sponsor of the upcoming African American Golf Expo and Forum that Jim Beatty and his friends are putting on next February, because we'd love to see more African American owners of golf courses, right? What can we do to teach them about the life of a golf course owner? Don, I'm going to have you teach the real life of a golf course owner at that class for those that are interested in getting into the business. I think that's a great value that we can provide by going into the community of African Americans and talking about owning golf courses, something we've never done before. So I'm willing to get uncomfortable with you, Don. I'm glad you were here, chat with me about this first conversation. But thank you. And to everybody at home, appreciate you joining. Don, you want to close off with any words?
No, I'm just excited. You're saying let your hair down, and you have no hair. So I appreciate you saying that. So no, it's looking forward to next week. Looking forward to next week. But you know what? If you want more friends, be friendly, and I think that's the beauty of golf, is that we provide a platform to create friends. And so that's what we need to be focused on. And so I'm looking forward to next week and talking to Renee. She's one of the greatest people I've ever met, and I can't wait for everybody else to hear from her.
I agree. Thanks everybody for joining us today. We'll see you next week.